Marcus hadn't eaten in 3 days when he heard the scream. 7-year-old Lily was cornered in the alley, a massive Rottweiler lunging at her throat. Without thinking, the 14-year-old homeless boy threw himself between them. The dog's jaws clamped down on his arm as Lily's mother Sarah watched in horror. What Marcus didn't know, this wasn't just any family. Sarah's husband Reaper was a top member of the Hells Angels. And when 500 bikers learned what this starving boy sacrificed for one of their own, they made him an offer that would either save his life or destroy it. Welcome to Hells Angels family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because this story will touch your heart in ways you won't expect. To my faithful subscribers who've been here from the beginning, may God continue to bless you abundantly. Before we dive in, let's lift this moment up in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you asking for your divine protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their bodies, provide for their needs, and give them peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround them with your favor and let your presence be felt in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, what you're about to witness isn't just a story about survival. It's about a 14-year-old homeless boy who threw himself in front of a rabid dog to save a stranger's daughter, and how 500 bikers showed him what family really means when the whole world had abandoned him. The Rottweiler's growl cut through the Chicago winter air like a serrated blade, low and guttural, the kind of sound that triggered something primal in the human brain. Run, hide, survive. Marcus pressed his spine against the alley wall, gripping the half-eaten burger he'd salvaged from the dumpster behind Millennium Park's tourist restaurants. The meat was cold, the bun soggy with discarded ketchup, but his stomach didn't care about dignity anymore. 3 days without real food did that to you. Made you grateful for garbage. Made you invisible. 14 years old, and the city walked past him like he was part of the architecture. Just another homeless kid the system had chewed up and spit out onto Michigan Avenue's frozen streets. 6 months since his mother overdosed in their South Side apartment, needle still in her arm, eyes staring at nothing. 6 months since Child Protective Services shuttled him through 3 different foster homes like defective merchandise. The first family used his monthly check to fund their gambling habit. The second locked him in the basement when he asked for seconds at dinner. The third simply pretended he didn't exist until he made it easier for everyone and left. February in Chicago was a killer. Literally. Last week Marcus had found another street kid frozen behind a dumpster on Wacker Drive, 16 years old, curled up like he was sleeping. The cops didn't even put up crime scene tape. Just another statistic. Marcus should have stayed hidden in his corner, should have finished his salvaged meal, and disappeared back into the shadows where forgotten children lived. But then the scream changed everything. High-pitched, terrified, a child's voice that sliced through his chest and turned his blood to ice water. Marcus dropped the burger without thinking. His feet moved before his brain caught up, worn sneakers splashing through puddles of February slush mixed with road salt and motor oil. He rounded the corner at full sprint, and the scene hit him like a physical blow. 20 feet away, a little girl. Maybe 7 years old, blonde pigtails tied with purple ribbons, pink winter jacket that probably cost more than Marcus had seen in his entire life, stood paralyzed against a brick wall. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps, creating small clouds in the freezing air. Her eyes were locked on the nightmare in front of her. The Rottweiler was massive, easily 130 pounds of pure muscle wrapped in black and tan fur, now matted with dirt and something darker. Blood, maybe. Its movements were wrong, jerky, unpredictable, like a machine with broken gears. Foam dripped from its jaws in thick ropes. Its eyes were what terrified Marcus most. Wild, unfocused, rabid. Lily. A woman's voice cracked with panic, razor-sharp terror that only a parent could produce. Baby, don't move. Please don't move. The mother stood 15 feet back, designer jeans tucked into Ugg boots, a Canada Goose jacket worth $800 minimum. Marcus knew because he'd seen tourists wearing them, laughing and taking selfies by the bean while he shivered in a hoodie with holes in both elbows. She held her iPhone with shaking hands, screaming at the 911 dispatcher with that entitled urgency rich people got when the world didn't protect them the way it was supposed to. But money couldn't stop what was about to happen. The dog was already moving, muscles bunching under its fur, preparing to lunge at the small girl pressed against the wall. Marcus saw it all in slow motion, the dog's haunches lowering, the girl's eyes going impossibly wide, the mother's mouth opening in a scream that hadn't formed yet. He didn't think. Thinking was a luxury for people with futures. His body moved on pure instinct. The same instinct that kept him alive in alleys where predators hunted, the same instinct that told him which subway cars to avoid at 2 a.m., which street corners belonged to which gangs. Survival instinct. The only thing he had left. Marcus threw himself forward, closing the distance in 4 desperate strides. His shadow fell across the little girl just as the Rottweiler launched. She looked up at him, this filthy, homeless boy materializing between her and death, with an expression that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Hope! Run!" Marcus shouted, spreading his arms wide. The Rottweiler hit him like a freight train made of teeth and fury. Subscribe now. What happens in the next 60 seconds will leave you speechless. The impact drove all air from Marcus's lungs. He went down hard, shoulder blades slamming into concrete that scraped his palms raw through his fingerless gloves. The dog's weight crushed his chest. Then came the teeth. The Rottweiler's jaws clamped onto his right forearm with hydraulic pressure, canines sinking through his hoodie sleeve like it was tissue paper. Marcus felt the exact moment teeth punctured skin, a sharp, bright pain that immediately exploded into white-hot agony that consumed his entire world. He screamed. Couldn't help it. The sound tore from his throat, primal and desperate, the kind of scream that acknowledged death was coming and begged it to wait just a little longer. The dog shook its head violently, trying to tear his arm from the socket like a chew toy. Marcus felt tendons stretch, muscle tissue rip, teeth grinding against bone with a sound that shouldn't exist outside of nightmares. Blood soaked through his hoodie, the only jacket he owned, the only thing keeping him from freezing to death in Chicago's brutal winter. His vision blurred. Red crept in at the edges like someone was slowly closing bloody curtains. The pain was beyond anything he'd experienced. Not the hunger cramps that twisted his stomach into knots, not the beating he'd taken from his second foster father's biological son, not the frostbite that had nearly cost him 3 toes last December. This was different. This was his body shutting down, systems failing, darkness rushing in. But through the agony, through the blood loss and terror, Marcus saw something that made it all worthwhile. The little girl, Lily, was running into her mother's arms. Safe. He'd done it. Oh my God. Oh my God. The mother's voice seemed distant, underwater, like Marcus was drowning and she was screaming from the shore. Somebody help him. Please. The Rottweiler released his arm for half a second, repositioning its grip for a better angle, and Marcus saw the damage. His forearm looked like raw meat. Blood pumped from puncture wounds in rhythmic spurts. Arterial bleeding, the kind that killed you in minutes. Flaps of skin hung loose. White bone peeked through torn muscle. He was going to die in an alley saving a rich kid whose mother would forget his name by tomorrow. A man's shout cut through the chaos. Hey, get back. A jogger appeared, late 30s, athletic build, wearing a Nike running jacket that probably cost $200. He wielded a metal trash can lid like a shield, eyes wild with adrenaline. He didn't hesitate, didn't calculate the risk. Just swung the lid like a baseball bat, connecting with the Rottweiler's skull with a metallic clang that echoed off brick walls. The dog yelped, confused. The jogger swung again. Again. The third strike sent the animal stumbling backward, finally releasing Marcus's arm. It stood there for a moment, swaying, rabies and concussion fighting for control of its broken brain. Then it turned and bolted down the alley, disappearing into the maze of Chicago's back streets. Marcus collapsed. His right arm was useless, hanging at his side like dead weight. He cradled it against his chest with his left hand, trying to apply pressure the way he'd seen in a first aid video at his old school. Blood soaked through his fingers immediately. Too much blood. Way too much. Stay with me, kid. The jogger dropped to his knees beside Marcus, pressing his expensive Nike jacket against the wounds without hesitation. Ambulance is 2 minutes out. You're going to be okay. You hear me? You're going to be fine. Marcus's eyes drifted past the jogger to the mother and daughter. Lily was crying, hiccuping sobs that shook her small body, but she was alive, breathing, whole. Her mother held her tight, rocking her, whispering reassurances. But the woman's eyes were on Marcus, staring at him with an expression that didn't make sense. Not disgust at his dirty clothes and unwashed hair. Not pity for the homeless kid bleeding out in the alley. Something else entirely. Something that looked almost like recognition, like she was seeing a ghost. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, kneeling down while keeping Lily tucked protectively behind her. Her voice was steadier now, but her hands still trembled. "Marcus." It came out as a whisper. His voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. I'm sorry about your daughter. Sorry." Tears spilled down Sarah's face, cutting clean tracks through her expensive makeup. "You saved her life. That animal would have." She choked on the words, couldn't finish. Couldn't say out loud what would have happened if Marcus hadn't been there. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The sound triggered Marcus's survival instincts despite the blood loss, despite the shock setting in and making his whole body shake. Ambulance meant hospital. Hospital meant questions. Social workers with clipboards and fake sympathetic smiles. Questions meant Child Protective Services. CPS meant another foster home, another family that would cash the checks and lock him in basements. He tried to sit up, ignoring the way the world tilted sideways. "I should go." "You can't." Sarah's hand pressed gently but firmly on his shoulder, keeping him down. "Your arm. Marcus, you need surgery. Real medical care. You've lost so much blood. I don't have insurance." The words tasted like shame, like failure, like every other time he'd had to admit he was nobody with nothing. "Comment where you're watching from. This could happen in your city tomorrow." Sarah's expression hardened into something fierce. "I'll pay for it. Every cent. I don't care what it costs." She said it without hesitation, without calculation, like money was just paper and his life actually mattered. "Why?" Marcus asked. The question came out small, confused. People didn't help him. "That's not how the world worked." "Because you threw yourself in front of a rabid dog for my daughter." Sarah's voice cracked. "Because you're 14 years old and you're bleeding in an alley, and I'm not letting you disappear. My name is Sarah. This is Lily. And you." She reached out and carefully, so carefully, touched his uninjured hand. "You're not alone anymore. Please, let me help you." The paramedics arrived in a blur of flashing lights and urgent voices. 2 of them, both moving with practiced efficiency that came from seeing terrible things every day. They loaded Marcus onto a stretcher, started in 4 in his left arm, wrapped his mangled right arm in temporary bandaging that immediately soaked through with crimson. Sarah stood, still holding Lily, and moved toward the ambulance. "Ma'am, family only." The lead paramedic protested, blocking her path. Sarah's entire demeanor shifted. The crying mother vanished, replaced by someone who commanded rooms and didn't take no for answers. "I'm his emergency contact. His only contact. And I'm not leaving him alone." Something in her voice made the paramedic step aside. The ride to Northwestern Memorial Hospital passed in fragments. Fluorescent lights overhead. The steady beep of monitoring equipment. Lily's small face watching him with wide eyes. Sarah on her phone, making calls in a voice that turned steel-hard when she needed something done immediately. At the emergency room, doctors swarmed Marcus like he was someone important. Like he mattered. They cut away his hoodie. His only defense against Chicago's brutal winter, now ruined beyond repair, and exposed the full damage. One doctor actually gasped. Deep lacerations across his entire right forearm. Puncture wounds that went to the bone, some nearly through it. Torn muscle tissue, severed tendons, damaged nerves. The lead surgeon, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands, counted 47 stitches needed before she even started the procedure. They gave him something for the pain through his 4. Morphine, maybe. The world went soft and distant, sounds muffled like he was underwater, wrapped in cotton. Through the fog, He heard Sarah in the hallway making phone calls. Her voice carried that edge people got when they were used to being obeyed, when the word no was a suggestion they ignored. Reaper, you need to come home. Now. Pause. Silence heavy with tension. Something's happened with Lily. Another pause, longer this time. She's fine. She's safe. Because of... Her voice dropped too low for Marcus to hear, becoming just a murmur beneath the hospital's ambient noise. Marcus's eyes drifted shut. Surgery took 3 hours. When he woke in a recovery room, the painkillers had worn down to a dull throb. The machines still beeped their steady rhythm. The fluorescent lights still hummed their eternal song. But something felt different. Heavy. Dangerous. The air pressure had changed, like right before a thunderstorm. He turned his head, groggy and disoriented. Lily sat in a chair beside his bed, her small hand wrapped around his bandaged fingers. She gave him a tiny smile, eyes still red-rimmed from crying. Sarah stood by the window, arms crossed, posture rigid. She wasn't looking at Marcus. She was watching the door like a soldier on guard duty. The door opened. A man filled the doorway. Not walked through it, filled it. 6'4", easily 250 pounds of muscle wrapped in leather and chains. His arms were covered in tattoos that disappeared under a black vest decorated with patches and symbols Marcus didn't fully recognize. But he recognized the main one. Everyone in Chicago knew that deaths head with wings. Hell's Angels. The man's presence sucked oxygen from the room. This wasn't someone who asked permission. This was someone who took what he wanted and broke anyone who stood in his way. Reaper. Sarah's voice was quiet. Careful. The way you spoke to explosives. Reaper's eyes locked on Marcus. Cold. Calculating. Reading him like a book written in blood and scars and street survival. His gaze traveled from Marcus's face to his bandaged arm to the 4 dripping fluids into his system. Then his eyes shifted to Lily, to her small hand holding the homeless boy's fingers, and something flickered across his face. An emotion too quick and too complex to name. Behind Reaper, 6 more men appeared. All leather. All patches. All radiating the same predatory energy that made Marcus's survival instincts scream run even though he couldn't move. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. These weren't the kind of men who made idle threats. These were the kind who buried bodies in Indiana cornfields and never lost a night's sleep. Reaper's jaw tightened, muscle flexing under his beard. When he spoke, his voice was gravel and thunder and barely contained violence. Everyone out. He didn't look away from Marcus. Didn't blink. I need to talk to this kid. Alone. Sarah opened her mouth to protest, but Reaper's hand came up. Just a small gesture, fingers raising slightly, but it carried absolute authority. The kind of authority that came from men following your orders into war. Sarah hesitated for 1 heartbeat. 2. Then she took Lily's hand. Her daughter protested with a small whimper and left. The other 6 men followed like shadows. The door clicked shut. Marcus was alone with the wolf. The silence stretched, oppressive and suffocating. Reaper didn't move, didn't speak, just studied Marcus like he was a puzzle that might explode if solved incorrectly. Finally, Marcus found his voice. Are you here to kill me? The question hung in the air. Honest. Direct. The only thing Marcus had left was truth. No point in games when you own nothing. Reaper's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something that might have been respect. That depends, Reaper said slowly, on what you tell me in the next 5 minutes. And Marcus realized with crystal clarity that he had absolutely no idea if he'd just been saved by an angel or marked for death by the devil himself. Reaper moved like a predator, slow, deliberate, each step calculated. He crossed the hospital room and stopped at the foot of Marcus's bed, massive hands gripping the metal railing. The fluorescent lights cast shadows across his face, making him look even more dangerous. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd faced street gangs, abusive foster parents, freezing Chicago nights that nearly killed him. But this was different. This man radiated power that came from commanding loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure. How old are you? Reaper's voice was quieter now, but no less intense. 14. Family. Dead. Mom overdosed 6 months ago. Foster care. Marcus's jaw tightened. 3 homes. None of them worked out. Reaper studied him in silence, eyes boring into Marcus like he could read every secret, every lie, every desperate truth. Then something unexpected happened. The big man's shoulders dropped slightly. His grip on the bed rail loosened. And when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that had nothing to do with threat. "Do you know what the Hells Angels value above everything else?" Reaper asked. Marcus shook his head, confused by the shift. "Loyalty. Brotherhood. Protecting our own." Reaper reached into his leather vest and pulled out a worn photograph, edges frayed from being handled too many times. He held it out. Marcus took it with his good hand. The photo showed a teenage boy, maybe 15, with dark hair and sharp features. He wore a Hells Angels prospect vest and was grinning at the camera with an expression full of life and hope. His name was Danny, Reaper said, and for the first time, emotion cracked through his armor. He was 14. 1 month ago, he threw himself in front of a speeding car to save another member's 6-year-old son. Died on impact. Marcus stared at the photo. The resemblance was unsettling. Same build, same sharp cheekbones, same desperate hunger in the eyes that came from growing up with nothing. The Brotherhood never got to repay that debt, Reaper continued, his voice rough. Never got to show him what it meant to be family. He died protecting one of our own, and we. He stopped, jaw working like the words were physically painful. We buried a kid who deserved better. Marcus looked up from the photograph, understanding dawning. That's why you're here. Reaper nodded. You threw yourself in front of a rabid dog to save my daughter. My 7-year-old daughter who's everything to me. He paused, eyes glistening. The club takes care of its own, Marcus. You saved my family. That makes you family now. Like this video if you believe in second chances, or keep scrolling. Marcus wanted to believe him. God, he wanted to. But the streets had taught him that adults lied. That promises meant nothing. That hope was just another weapon people used to hurt you. Why should I trust you? The question came out harder than intended. Reaper didn't flinch. Because I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm offering you a choice. Walk out of here tomorrow with nothing. Back to the streets. Back to dumpster diving and freezing. Or let me show you what brotherhood actually means. What's the catch? A ghost of a smile crossed Reaper's face. Smart kid. The catch is this isn't charity. The club doesn't do handouts. You'll earn your place. You'll follow rules. And you'll live with my family for 6 months while we figure out if this works. Marcus's mind raced. 6 months of shelter. Food. Safety. But living with strangers who could turn on him the moment he became inconvenient. I need proof, Marcus said, that this is real. Reaper's smile widened. Fair enough. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow, I'll show you exactly what you're getting into. The next day, Reaper checked Marcus out of the hospital against medical advice, signing paperwork that made him temporarily responsible for Marcus's care. They drove through Chicago in Reaper's black SUV, Marcus watching familiar streets pass by with new eyes. They pulled up to a warehouse in an industrial district Marcus recognized from his street wanderings. The building looked abandoned from the outside, broken windows, graffiti-covered walls. But the parking lot held over 100 motorcycles, gleaming chrome and custom paint jobs worth small fortunes. This is our clubhouse, Reaper said, killing the engine. 500 members across Illinois. I called in every single one for today. Marcus's stomach dropped. Why? Because the Brotherhood votes on everything that matters. And you matter now. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something between a bar and a fortress. Pool tables, leather couches, a massive oak bar stocked with top-shelf liquor. But what stopped Marcus cold was the men. Over 300 bikers packed into the space, all wearing Hells Angels patches, all turning to stare as Reaper led Marcus through the crowd. The silence was deafening. Reaper guided Marcus to a raised platform at the front. The entire club watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to outright hostility. Marcus felt like a rabbit surrounded by wolves. Brothers, Reaper's voice boomed through the space. 3 days ago, my daughter Lily was attacked by a rabid dog. She would have died. This 14-year-old kid, homeless, starving, with nothing to his name. threw himself between a 130-pound Rottweiler and my baby girl. Took the attack himself. Nearly bled out saving a stranger. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus saw some men nodding, others frowning. He looks just like Danny, someone called out from the back. That's what I thought, Reaper acknowledged. The universe gave us a second chance to do right. Danny died protecting family. Marcus nearly died protecting mine. I'm proposing we make him a ward of the club. Set up a trust fund. Give him a real chance. He's a kid, another voice shouted. We don't prospect children. I'm not proposing he prospect, Reaper shot back. I'm proposing we act like the Brotherhood we claim to be. We vote. Yay means we support him. Housing, education, future. Nay means he walks out that door right now. Subscribe before you see what 500 bikers decide. You won't believe it. The room erupted in debate. Arguments flew back and forth about liability, about tradition, about what the club stood for. Marcus stood frozen, watching his fate decided by strangers. Finally, Reaper called for order. All in favor, raise your hand. Hands went up. Marcus counted quickly, maybe 200. Opposed? Fewer hands. Maybe 75. Abstaining? The rest. Reaper's face broke into a genuine smile. Motion carries. Marcus, welcome to the Hells Angels family. The clubhouse exploded in cheers. Men clapped Marcus on the shoulder, shook his good hand, called him little brother. Someone handed him a club t-shirt. Someone else started talking about getting him into a good school. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and the first time in 6 months Marcus felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Hope. Marcus moved into Reaper and Sarah's penthouse that night. A 3-bedroom apartment in a luxury building overlooking Lake Michigan. His room had an actual bed with clean sheets, a desk, a closet full of new clothes Sarah had somehow acquired in 6 hours. Lily showed him her room, chattering excitedly about her toys and school and how she told all her friends about her new big brother. Sarah made dinner, real food, hot and plentiful. Reaper explained house rules with surprising gentleness. It felt like a dream, too good to be real. On his 3rd night, Marcus woke to raised voices. The bedside clock read 2:17 a.m. He lay still, listening. The voices came from the living room, angry, urgent. He crept to his bedroom door and opened it a crack. Reaper stood in the living room facing 3 club members Marcus didn't recognize. All older, all wearing patches that indicated high rank. You don't know anything about this kid's past, one of them snarled, slamming his fist on the coffee table. What if he's a plant? What if CPS sent him to infiltrate the club? That's insane, Reaper growled. Is it? Another member pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. He dropped it on the table. Marcus's DMV photo stared up from the paperwork, paper-clipped to pages he'd never seen before. Reaper picked up the folder, flipping through it. With each page, his face went paler. Where did you get this? The 3rd member's voice dropped to ice. The question is, Reaper, why didn't you? Marcus didn't sleep the rest of the night. He lay in his new bed, the first real bed he'd had in 6 months, with sheets that smelled like lavender detergent and a mattress that didn't have springs stabbing through fabric, staring at the ceiling while his mind replayed what he'd overheard on an endless loop. What if he's a plant? What if CPS sent him? You don't know anything about this kid's past. Why didn't you? Those words cut deeper than the Rottweiler's teeth. For 3 days, Marcus had allowed himself to hope, to believe that maybe, just maybe, the universe had stopped punishing him for being born. That Reaper's offer of brotherhood was real. That Sarah's kindness wasn't just guilt. That Lily's genuine affection meant he'd finally found somewhere he belonged. But hope was a luxury street kids couldn't afford. Hope got you killed. The manila folder haunted him. What was in those documents that made Reaper's face go pale? What secrets about his mother's death had the club uncovered? And most terrifying of all, what if Marcus himself was the danger they feared? He watched the digital clock on the nightstand tick through the hours. 2:47 a.m., 3:23 a.m., 4:51 a.m. Each minute felt like an interrogation, questions piling up with no answers. When dawn finally broke over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink, Marcus gave up pretending he could rest. He got out of bed, careful not to jar his bandaged arm. The stitches pulled with every movement, a constant reminder of how drastically his life had changed in 72 hours. He found Reaper in the kitchen, sitting at the granite island like a monument to exhaustion. The big man nursed black coffee in a mug that looked comically small in his massive hands. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His leather vest hung on the back of the chair, revealing muscular arms covered in tattoos that told stories Marcus didn't know how to read yet. "We need to talk," Marcus said from the doorway, voice rougher than intended. Reaper didn't look surprised, didn't even flinch. He simply gestured to the chair across from him with the weariness of someone who'd been expecting this conversation for hours. "You heard last night. It wasn't a question." "Yeah." Marcus sat, instinctively keeping his injured arm close to his chest. "What's in the folder?" Reaper took a long drink of coffee, buying time or gathering courage. Marcus couldn't tell which. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone delivering news that would hurt. "Your mother's death," Reaper began, each word measured and careful, "is officially listed in Chicago PD records as a suspected accidental overdose. Coroner signed off on it. Case closed within 48 hours. But there are—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Inconsistencies." Marcus's throat tightened, mouth suddenly dry. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "The kind that suggest it wasn't an accident." Reaper set down his mug. "The kind that suggest your mother might have been murdered." The word hung in the air like poison gas. Murdered. Not overdosed. Not lost to addiction. Murdered. The coroner found injection marks that didn't match her documented pattern of use. Reaper continued, his detective mode voice emerging. "Neighbors reported seeing unfamiliar motorcycles outside your apartment building the week before she died. And there's something else." He hesitated, clearly dreading what came next. "Your mother had connections to the Iron Disciples MC." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Iron Disciples were the Hells Angels' primary rivals in Chicago. A vicious outlaw motorcycle gang that controlled the South Side drug trade through systematic intimidation, violence, and murder. Marcus had seen their patches before, seen the fear that flickered across people's faces when Iron Disciples rolled through a neighborhood. He'd seen what they did to informants, to rivals, to anyone who crossed them. Bodies turned up in dumpsters. Witnesses disappeared. Families got torched in their homes as warnings. "My mom wasn't in a gang," Marcus protested, but even as he said it, doubt crept in. What did he really know about his mother's life? She'd disappeared for days at a time, came home with cash she couldn't explain, made phone calls in hushed voices that stopped when he entered the room. She was sick. Addiction is a disease, not— "I know," Reaper interrupted, surprising gentleness in his voice. "I'm not saying she was a member, but she knew people. Did courier runs for them, maybe. Small deliveries, low-level stuff. The Iron Disciples recruit civilians all the time. People who need money, people they can manipulate. And when you know the Iron Disciples, Marcus, you don't get to just walk away. Not alive." Marcus's world tilted. Every memory of his mother suddenly had new shadows, new implications. The late-night visitors. The paranoia. The way she'd stopped letting him answer the door or talk to strangers. She hadn't just been an addict spiraling out of control. She'd been afraid. "You think they killed her?" The question came out as a whisper. "I think it's very possible. And that's a problem for you." "Why?" Reaper leaned forward, elbows on the counter, his massive frame radiating tension. "Because if you're connected to them, even unknowingly, even through your mother, you could be a liability to this club. Or worse, you could be a plant sent to gather intelligence on our operations." "I'm 14 years old." Marcus's voice cracked, emotion overwhelming control. "I've been living in abandoned buildings, eating garbage from dumpsters for 6 months. You think I'm some criminal mastermind playing four-dimensional chess?" "No, absolutely not." Reaper's voice was firm. "But the club has to be careful, Marcus. We have enemies who would absolutely use a kid exactly like you, vulnerable, desperate, grateful, to infiltrate our organization. They'd manipulate you without you even knowing it. Use you as a spy, a listening device, a weapon." The paranoia in Reaper's voice wasn't theoretical. This had happened before. I believe you're innocent, Reaper continued, his eyes searching Marcus's face. Everything in my gut tells me you're just a kid who got dealt a terrible hand and did something incredibly brave. But I need to prove that to the Brotherhood. I need to investigate your past, find out what really happened to your mother, and clear your name before the club decides you're too risky to keep around. Before Marcus could respond, Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for the day in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Marcus's mother earned in a month. She looked at both of them, reading the tension in the air with practiced ease. Lily's still asleep, she said carefully, her voice neutral. What's going on? Marcus knows about the folder, Reaper said. Sarah's face went carefully blank, the kind of blank that came from years of controlling reactions, from hiding thoughts behind professional masks. It was the expression people wore when they were hiding something significant. Marcus caught it immediately. Street survival meant becoming an expert in reading micro-expressions, noticing the tiny physical tells that separated truth from deception. You knew? Marcus asked her, unable to keep the accusation from his voice. I knew Reaper was investigating, Sarah admitted, moving into the kitchen with deliberate casualness. It's standard procedure when bringing someone new into the family. We have to protect ourselves and our daughter. Something about her tone felt rehearsed, prepared, like she'd practiced this conversation in her head multiple times, anticipated this exact question and crafted the perfect response. Marcus filed the observation away, adding it to the growing list of things that didn't quite add up about Sarah. Like and subscribe. You'll need to see where this investigation leads. 2 hours later, a club member named Axel arrived at the penthouse. Mid-50s, barrel-chested, with a gray beard trimmed military precise and intelligent eyes that absorbed everything with disturbing efficiency. He wore casual clothes instead of club leather, but carried himself with the authority of someone accustomed to command. Reaper introduced him as a former Chicago PD detective who'd spent 20 years in homicide before retiring to handle security consulting for the club, which was code for. He investigated people, found their secrets, and determined if they were threats. Axel spread documents across the dining room table. Police reports, social services records, hospital admissions, school transcripts, psychiatric evaluations. Marcus's entire life reduced to bureaucratic paperwork, every trauma and failure cataloged in official typeface. Your mother, Jennifer Hayes, died on August 14th of last year, Axel began, his voice carrying the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen too many dead bodies to be shocked anymore. He tapped a coroner's report with one thick finger. Official cause of death. Accidental drug overdose. Heroin, specifically, with trace amounts of fentanyl. But look at this. He pulled out autopsy photographs, then mercifully kept them face down when he saw Marcus flinch. The injection site was on her left inner forearm. Axel continued, pointing to a diagram instead. But according to her medical history, ER visits, clinic records, she was left-handed. And addicts almost universally inject with their dominant hand into their non-dominant arm. Right-handers use the left arm. Left-handers use the right. It's about control, about being able to find the vein and maintain pressure. Marcus's stomach churned. He'd never thought about the mechanics of his mother's addiction, never wanted to picture the actual moments of her using. So someone else injected her? The words tasted like bile. Possibly. Or she was physically restrained and forced. Either way, this wasn't consistent with her typical user behavior. Axel pulled out another document. A police incident report dated 2 weeks before her death. Your mother filed a complaint on July 30th about threatening phone calls. She told responding officers she'd witnessed something she shouldn't have and was being pressured to keep quiet. Witnessed what? Marcus leaned forward despite himself. The report doesn't specify. She refused to elaborate, became agitated when pressed for details, then withdrew the complaint entirely the next day. Axel's expression darkened. Classic intimidation pattern. Someone scared her into silence. The Iron Disciples, Reaper said quietly. That's my working theory, Axel agreed. And here's where it gets complicated for us, for the club. He pulled out a photograph, this one a grainy surveillance image from a gas station security camera. It showed Marcus's mother talking to a man in a leather vest covered in patches. Hell's Angels patches. Marcus leaned forward, squinting at the pixelated image. The man's face was turned away from the camera, features obscured. Who was that? The room went silent. Reaper and Axel exchanged a look heavy with unspoken communication, the kind of look that meant they knew something terrible and were deciding how much to share. We don't know, Axel finally admitted. The image quality is too poor for facial recognition software. But this photo was taken at a gas station 3 blocks from your apartment, 3 days before your mother died. And that vest. He zoomed in on the patches. That's definitely one of ours. So the Hells Angels might have been involved in her death? Marcus's voice rose, cracking with emotion. And you brought me into your home? Let me sleep in the room next to your daughter. We're trying to figure out what happened, Reaper said firmly, his command voice emerging. This could be a member who was trying to help her, trying to extract her from the Iron Disciples. Or it could be someone who's no longer with the club. We expel members, Marcus. When they violate code, when they endanger the Brotherhood, we cut them loose. Hell, sometimes they end up dead. Or, Axel interjected, his tone darker. It could be someone still active who we haven't identified yet. The implications hung in the air like a guillotine blade. What are you saying? Marcus whispered. I'm saying we have a potential security breach, Axel said bluntly. Either your mother was connected to a Hells Angels member, making you connected by extension, or someone in our organization was involved in activities with the Iron Disciples. Either scenario is dangerous. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood with a sound like a scream. My mother is dead, and you're treating this like some corporate espionage case. Marcus, please. Sarah stood too, reaching for him with perfectly manicured hands. He jerked away from her touch, suddenly unable to bear the proximity. Don't. Just. I need air. He stormed to his room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. His mind raced with questions that had no answers, with implications that spread like cracks through ice. For 3 days, he'd let himself hope. Let himself believe in family and safety and second chances. But hope was just another kind of trap, and he'd walked right into it. That afternoon, Marcus sat in the living room pretending to watch television while his mind churned through everything Axel had revealed. Some crime documentary played on the massive flat screen, but he absorbed nothing, his eyes staring through the images rather than at them. He noticed Sarah pass by the hallway, phone in hand, angling it slightly toward where he sat. The gesture was subtle, so subtle most people would miss it entirely. A tiny adjustment of her wrist, the phone's camera lens catching a reflection in the window behind him. She was photographing him. Marcus had spent 6 months avoiding security cameras and police patrols, learning to spot surveillance, to recognize when someone was documenting him for purposes he wouldn't like. You developed instincts for these things when staying invisible meant staying alive. He waited until Sarah left the room, then quietly stood and followed. Through the hallway, staying light on his feet, using techniques he'd learned sneaking through abandoned buildings. He saw her disappear into the master bedroom, heard the door click but not latch completely. Marcus crept closer, positioning himself where he could see through the crack. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, typing rapidly on her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen with urgent purpose. Then she hit send, attaching something. The photo she'd just taken, probably. Sending it to someone Marcus couldn't identify. Who was she reporting to? And why photograph him in secret? Marcus retreated before she noticed, paranoia blooming in his chest like black flowers. Was anyone in this family actually trustworthy? Or was he just a pawn in some game he didn't understand, being moved across a board he couldn't see? Subscribe and like if you think Marcus should run, or stay and find the truth. That evening, around 8 p.m., Marcus's burner phone buzzed. The cheap flip phone Reaper had given him for emergencies, claiming every family member needed one for safety. Or for tracking. The text came from a blocked number. They're lying to you about your mother. Meet me at Union Station, Platform 9, midnight. Come alone, or you'll never learn the truth. Someone who knew her. Marcus stared at the message until his vision blurred, reading it over and over, searching for hidden meaning in the sparse words. Every instinct he developed on the streets screamed this was a trap, a setup. Whoever sent this was luring him to an isolated location in the middle of the night. But what if it wasn't? What if someone actually had answers about his mother's death, about her connection to the Hells Angels, about why she'd been murdered? What if the truth was waiting at Platform 9? He looked up at the family photo on the mantle, the one he'd glanced at a dozen times without really seeing. Reaper, Sarah, and Lily smiled at the camera in front of some lake, looking perfect and happy. The ideal American family. But something was wrong with the frame. Marcus stood and moved closer, examining it properly for the first time. There, in the left corner, someone had been carefully cut out. Not torn away in anger, but precisely removed with scissors or a blade. Professional. Deliberate. Only a sliver of leather vest remained visible, the edge of what looked like a Hells Angels patch. Someone important enough to display in the family photo. Someone close enough to stand next to Reaper. And then someone dangerous enough to erase completely. Who had they cut out? And why remove them from history instead of just taking down the whole photo? Marcus turned to go back to his room, mind racing with possibilities, and something small and metallic fell from his jacket pocket. The new jacket Reaper had bought him to replace the one destroyed by the dog attack. It hit the hardwood floor with a tiny clink. A key. Marcus picked it up, frowning. Small, silver, stamped with a number. Attached to it was a tag. Secure Store Chicago, Unit 447, South Side, Milwaukee Avenue. He'd never seen this key before in his life. Someone had planted it in his pocket. The South Side, where his mother had died, where he'd lived before the streets claimed him. Marcus's hands trembled as he stared at the key. A storage unit. His mother's belongings, maybe? Evidence the police had missed? Or another trap, another layer to this nightmare he'd stumbled into? He had 4 hours to decide if he was walking into salvation or execution. And somewhere in this penthouse, someone had given him this key. Someone who either wanted to help him or destroy him. Marcus made his decision at 10:47 p.m., staring at the storage unit key in his palm like it was a loaded weapon. He couldn't live with the questions anymore. Couldn't sleep another night in Reaper's luxury penthouse, wondering if his mother had been murdered by the very people now claiming to protect him. Couldn't pretend everything was normal while Sarah secretly photographed him and sent images to unknown contacts. Couldn't ignore the mysterious text promising truth at midnight. The not knowing was worse than any truth could be. Even terrible truth was better than this suffocating uncertainty. He dressed in dark clothes. Jeans and a black hoodie from the extensive wardrobe Sarah had somehow assembled in 6 hours, tags still attached to half the items. Everything fit perfectly, which meant she'd studied him closely enough to know his exact measurements. The thought made his skin crawl. How long had she been watching him before the dog attack? Had the whole thing been orchestrated? No, that was paranoia talking. The rabid Rottweiler was real. Lily's terror was real. His shredded arm was very, very real. But what came after? That might all be performance. Marcus waited, sitting on his bed fully dressed, listening to the apartment's nighttime rhythms. Through his bedroom door, he heard Reaper's heavy footsteps heading to the master bedroom around 11. Heard the low rumble of his voice talking to Sarah about club business. Heard Sarah's responses, her tone affectionate and natural, the perfect wife. Was any of it real? Around 11:10, he heard Sarah reading to Lily, her voice carrying that practiced maternal warmth that now felt like acting. A bedtime story about a princess and a dragon. Lily's sleepy questions. Sarah's patient answers. The sound of a kiss, a door closing, a nightlight clicking on. If Sarah was really FBI, was Lily even safe? Or was the child just another prop in an elaborate undercover operation? At 11:15 p.m., the apartment went quiet. Marcus gave it another 10 minutes, counting seconds in his head the way he used to when hiding from cops in abandoned buildings. When he reached 600, he moved. The penthouse was dark except for ambient city light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Chicago's skyline glittered like broken glass spread across black velvet, beautiful and dangerous. Marcus had learned to move silently over 6 months of street survival. How to distribute weight, which floorboards creaked, how to open doors without sound. He reached the front door without triggering any noise. The key to the storage unit felt heavy in his pocket, heavier than metal should feel, like it was made of consequences instead of brass. Marcus took one last look at the family photo on the mantel, at the mysteriously cut-out figure that haunted him, at Reaper's proud smile, at Sarah's perfect suburban mom expression that now seemed like a mask. Then he slipped out into the hallway, letting the door close with the softest possible click. The building's elevator descended in silence. Marcus watched the floor numbers count down, each digit bringing him closer to answers or disaster. The storage facility on Milwaukee Avenue looked exactly like what it was, a place where people hid things they couldn't keep at home. Secrets behind padlocks, lies in cardboard boxes, evidence waiting to condemn or exonerate. Marcus arrived via the Red Line train, having paid cash for the fare to avoid any electronic trail. His burner phone showed 11:43 p.m., 17 minutes until the mysterious meeting at Union Station. He'd go to the storage unit first, get answers, then decide if the midnight meeting was worth the risk of walking into an ambush. The facility was mostly automated. A gate with a numeric keypad, security cameras mounted at intervals that probably didn't work or weren't monitored, rows of orange metal doors stretching into shadow. The place smelled like concrete and motor oil and abandonment. Marcus entered the code printed on the key tag. The gate buzzed and clicked open. No security guard challenged him. No one cared what secrets people stored here at midnight. He found Unit 447 on the second floor, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat, in his injured arm, in his fingertips. The lock was industrial grade, relatively new. Someone had paid for this storage. Someone wanted whatever was inside protected. The key slid into the lock, turned, clicked with mechanical finality. Marcus lifted the rolling door, metal rattling in its tracks, and the smell hit him like a physical blow. His mother's perfume. Cheap drugstore brand she wore every day, white diamonds or something similar, now faded but still recognizable enough to transport Marcus back 6 months. Back to their apartment. Back to before everything fell apart. His eyes burned. He blinked hard, refusing to cry. Inside were boxes. Not many. His mother had owned almost nothing, especially at the end. But what was here felt preserved, like a tomb sealed against time and decay. Like someone had gathered her belongings carefully, reverently, and stored them for a purpose Marcus didn't understand yet. He knelt beside the first box, hands shaking. Inside he found clothes, her favorite sweater, jeans worn thin at the knees, a dress she'd worn to his 8th grade graduation. Touching them felt like touching ghosts. The second box held photographs in no particular order. Marcus as a baby, chubby and smiling. As a toddler with a gap-toothed grin. School pictures where he posed awkwardly, trying to look normal while wearing clothes from Goodwill. Pictures of his mother when she was younger, before addiction carved her face into angles and shadows. She'd been beautiful once. Happy. What had broken her? Who had broken her? The third box held a journal. Leather-bound, pages worn from constant handling. His mother's handwriting covered every page in frantic loops and scratches that grew more desperate-looking as the entries progressed. Marcus opened it randomly and saw dates spanning the last 2 years of her life. His hands trembled as he flipped to the final entries, dated just days before her death. Before the police found her on the bathroom floor with a needle in her arm and indifference in their eyes. August 10th. They know I saw what happened at the warehouse. The Iron Disciples called again tonight, 3rd time this week. Block number, but I know it's them. Said if I talk to police about what I witnessed, they'll hurt Marcus. Said they know where he goes to school, what route he walks home. I can't let them near my son. Can't let them touch him. But I don't know what to do. Where to run. They're everywhere on the south side. The entry cut off mid-thought. Ink smeared like she'd been interrupted. Marcus turned the page with numb fingers. August 11th. Met with someone today who says he can help. A man from a different motorcycle club, rival to the Disciples. He said his organization protects people from the Iron Disciples, that they have resources and territory where I'd be safe. But I don't trust him. The way he looked at me, like I was already dead, like I was just a problem to be solved. His name is Reaper. God help me, His actual road name is Reaper. What kind of savior calls himself Death? Marcus's blood turned to ice water in his veins. His vision tunneled. Reaper. The man currently sheltering him had approached his mother days before she died. August 12th. Reaper came to the apartment today. Marcus was at school. Thank God. Didn't want my son seeing these people. Reaper said, I need to testify against the Iron Disciples in federal court, that it's the only way to protect Marcus long-term. But I've seen what happens to witnesses. I've seen the bodies they find in dumpsters with their tongues cut out. He keeps talking about protection, about brotherhood, about how his club takes care of people. But all I see is another gang wanting to use me. Another group of violent men treating me like a tool. I told him no. He didn't like that. Said I was making a mistake. Said the disciples won't stop until I'm silenced permanently. Then he left, and I've been terrified ever since. August 13th. Can't sleep. Can't eat. Keep checking the locks. Keep looking out the window. Someone's watching the building. Dark SUV parked across the street for 3 hours today. Disciples? Hell's Angels? Does it matter? They're all predators, and I'm just prey. The entries stopped. 3 days later, Jennifer Hayes was dead. Like and subscribe if your heart is racing, because it gets worse. Marcus sat back on his heels, the journal clutched against his chest, breathing hard like he'd sprinted a mile. His mother had been terrified of Reaper, had refused to cooperate with him. And then she died under suspicious circumstances that were written off as an accidental overdose. And now Marcus was living in Reaper's home, eating at his table, sleeping in his daughter's room, calling him family. Had Reaper orchestrated everything? Killed his mother, waited 6 months, then used the dog attack as an opportunity to recruit Marcus? Was this all some elaborate scheme to control the son of a witness who wouldn't cooperate? Or was Marcus connecting dots that didn't form a real picture, seeing conspiracy where there was only terrible coincidence? He didn't know, couldn't know, not without confronting people who might kill him for asking the wrong questions. Marcus checked his phone. 11:54 p.m. 6 minutes to get to Union Station, which was at least 15 minutes away. He ran. Marcus barely made it to Union Station by midnight, sprinting the last 3 blocks with the journal clutched against his chest, lungs burning, injured arm throbbing with each jarring step. Platform 9 was in the older section of the station, mostly abandoned at night, trains infrequent after 11, shadows thick enough to hide anything or anyone. He arrived at 12:04 a.m., breathing hard, scanning the empty platform with wild eyes. At first he saw nothing. Just darkness and distant city sounds and the hollow echo of his own footsteps. Then a figure emerged from the shadows near the far stairwell. Sarah, but not the Sarah he knew. Not the concerned mother in cashmere sweaters and designer jeans. This Sarah wore tactical gear, dark cargo pants, fitted jacket with too many pockets, something that looked like body armor underneath. Her hair was pulled back severely. Her whole demeanor had changed from soft to sharp, from maternal to military. You came, she said, voice cold and professional, stripped of all warmth. Smart choice. What the hell is going on? Marcus backed away instinctively, suddenly aware he was trapped. Platform behind him dropping to train tracks. Sarah blocking the only exit. Sarah reached into her jacket. Marcus flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, she pulled out a badge. FBI. Gold shield catching ambient light. Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, Organized Crime Division. I'm not Reaper's wife, she said flatly, each word precisely delivered. I'm a federal agent embedded in a deep cover operation investigating the Hells Angels for racketeering, trafficking, and murder. Lily is my biological daughter, yes. But Reaper doesn't know what I really am. Thinks I'm just a civilian he married 3 years ago. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him, reality rearranging into nightmare configurations. You've been using me. This whole time. I've been doing my job. Sarah's eyes hardened into something almost reptilian. When you saved Lily from that dog, it was real. My gratitude was genuine. You actually did save my daughter's life, and I'll always be grateful for that. But then I saw an opportunity one couldn't ignore. An opportunity. Marcus's voice shook with rage and betrayal. A homeless 14-year-old with documented connections to both the Hells Angels And the Iron Disciples? You're the perfect intelligence asset. You can move between worlds, gather information, be places adults can't access. She stepped closer. You're invisible, Marcus. The system taught you how to disappear. I just needed to point you in the right direction. My mother's journal mentions Reaper, Marcus said, holding it up like a shield. She was terrified of him. He pressured her to testify. Did he kill her when she refused? Sarah hesitated, and that pause told Marcus more than words could. We don't have definitive proof. But we know the Hell's Angels were pressuring her to testify against the Iron Disciples in a federal investigation. When she refused to cooperate, she died under suspicious circumstances. Whether Reaper personally ordered the hit, carried it out himself, or just allowed it to happen. She shrugged with devastating casualness. That's what I need you to help me prove. You want me to spy on them. I want you to help me bring down a criminal organization responsible for drug trafficking, arms dealing, murder, witness intimidation, and systemic corruption. Sarah's voice took on a recruiting pitch quality. I can offer you witness protection, a new identity, money for college, a real future away from all of this. But you have to help me build the case first. Marcus felt physically sick. Everything. The hospital vigil, the Brotherhood vote, the trust fund, living with the family, Lily's affection. It was all manipulation. Sarah had coached her daughter to bond with him, had played the grateful mother perfectly, had positioned him exactly where she needed him to gather intelligence. I trusted you, Marcus whispered. Lily trusted you. And I'm sorry it has to be this way. But this is bigger than one kid's feelings, Marcus. The Hell's Angels have killed dozens of people. They're expanding their territory. If we don't stop them, gunfire erupted. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Rapid cracks that echoed off concrete and steel like thunder trapped in a bottle. Sarah dove without hesitation, grabbing Marcus and pulling him down as bullets sparked off metal railings and shattered tile. Marcus hit the ground hard, his healing arm exploding in agony. He tasted blood where he'd bitten his tongue. From the far end of the platform, figures emerged from darkness like demons materializing. Leather vests, Iron Disciples patches, at least 6 of them, possibly more in the shadows, all armed with handguns or compact rifles. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a planned ambush. FBI, Sarah shouted, drawing her own weapon from a shoulder holster with practiced speed. Drop your weapons, and more gunfire cut off her words. Sarah returned shots, muzzle flash strobing in the darkness, but they were catastrophically outnumbered and outgunned. Marcus crawled behind a concrete pillar, ears ringing, terror overwhelming rational thought. One of the Iron Disciples advanced with tactical precision, firing controlled 3-round bursts that chewed through the metal bench Sarah crouched behind. Sparks flew. Metal screamed. Sarah was pinned, trapped, running out of cover. Marcus saw the shooter angle for a clear shot at Sarah's head, saw his finger tighten on the trigger. He didn't think, couldn't think, just reacted the way he always did. Marcus threw himself forward, colliding with Sarah just as the shooter fired. White-hot pain exploded in his left shoulder, catastrophic, all-consuming. He'd been shot. Actually shot. The impact spun him around, and he went down hard, head cracking against concrete. Blood spread across his chest, hot and wet and wrong. Marcus! Sarah's scream seemed to come from underwater, distant and distorted. Then a new sound drowned out everything else, the roar of motorcycles. Not 1 or 2, but dozens. The thunderous rumble of at least 50 bikes flooding into Union Station from multiple entrances, headlights blazing like spotlights, engines echoing like apocalypse. Reaper arrived with his army. The Hell's Angels formed a perimeter with military precision, blocking every exit, trapping the Iron Disciples in a perfect kill box. 50 bikers, all armed, all ready for war, all waiting for Reaper's command. Reaper dismounted his custom Harley, his massive frame radiating barely contained fury. He took in the scene with a single sweeping glance. Marcus bleeding on the platform, Sarah with her FBI badge now visible on her tactical vest, the Iron Disciples caught between federal agent and outlaw bikers. His face went through a rapid evolution of emotions. Shock, recognition, rage, and finally something darker. Betrayal. Subscribe and like. What happens next will change everything. You used my daughter, Reaper snarled at Sarah, pulling a massive handgun and aiming it directly at her forehead. You brought a federal agent into my home, into my bed, made me believe you loved me. Reaper, listen, Sarah started, raising her hands. Shut your mouth. His voice was pure venom. He shifted the barrel toward Marcus, who was fading from blood loss, vision tunneling to a pinpoint. And you led her straight to us. Played the innocent victim while she gathered evidence. You're FBI too, aren't you? A juvenile informant. No, Marcus gasped. I didn't. From the shadows, the Iron Disciples' leader emerged, a scarred man with a serpent tattooed across his entire neck, its fangs reaching his jawline. He laughed, the sound echoing obscenely in the tense silence. Looks like your new son just destroyed your Brotherhood. Reaper, he called out mockingly. FBI knows everything now. Your operation, your territory, your members. You're done. So kill him and the Fed, or we will. Either way, the Hell's Angels are finished. Reaper's finger tightened on the trigger, aimed at Marcus's head. 50 Iron Disciples members materialized from the darkness. They'd been hiding, waiting, turning this into a massacre. The world slowed. Marcus's life didn't flash before his eyes. Just one memory surfaced with crystal clarity. His mother, the night before she died, waking him at 2 a.m. with wild eyes and trembling hands. If anything happens to me, she'd whispered urgently, gripping his shoulders. If you're ever in terrible danger from bad men in leather vests, if you think you're going to die, say these exact words. Phoenix Protocol. Someone will know what it means. Someone will help you. Promise me you'll remember. Phoenix Protocol, young Marcus had repeated, confused and frightened. That's right, baby. Phoenix Protocol. It's your lifeline. Your salvation. Never forget. Marcus, bleeding out on a train platform at 14 years old, surrounded by gang members and federal agents and a man who might have killed his mother, whispered the last thing his mother ever taught him. Phoenix. Protocol. Reaper's gun hand trembled violently. His eyes went impossibly wide, not with anger, but with shock. Recognition. Absolute horror. The weapon lowered slightly, barrel drifting from Marcus's head to his chest to nothing. What did you just say? Reaper's voice cracked, stripped of all authority. Where did you learn that phrase? Who told you those words? My mother told me. Marcus gasped through the pain, blood pooling beneath him on the cold platform. The night before she died. She made me memorize it. Said Phoenix Protocol would save me if I was ever in danger. Reaper's face drained of all color. The massive biker looked like he'd been struck by lightning, his weapon hanging loose in his trembling hand. Around them, 50 Hell's Angels members stood frozen, confused by their leader's uncharacteristic reaction. Jennifer, Reaper whispered, his voice breaking with raw emotion. She remembered. After everything, she remembered. The Iron Disciples' leader laughed mockingly. Touching reunion. Now kill them both before. Shut your mouth, Reaper snarled without looking away from Marcus. He lowered his weapon completely. Phoenix Protocol was a code phrase I gave to your mother 2 years ago. An emergency extraction signal. It meant if she ever used those words, the entire Hell's Angels organization would mobilize to protect her and anyone she designated, especially you. It was my sacred promise that I'd keep her safe. Sarah, Agent Mitchell, lowered her weapon slightly, clearly not expecting this revelation. I didn't kill your mother, Marcus, Reaper continued, kneeling beside the bleeding boy and applying pressure to the gunshot wound. I was trying to save her life. The Iron Disciples forced her to witness a murder. They executed a federal informant in a warehouse on the south side. Your mother delivered a package for them. Wrong place at the worst possible time. She saw everything. Marcus's vision swam, consciousness fading at the edges, but he forced himself to focus through the pain. She wrote in her journal, she was terrified of you. Because I told her a hard truth she didn't want to hear. That the only way to survive was to testify in federal court, to let us protect her while she helped the FBI build a case against the disciples. Reaper's eyes glistened with unshed tears. But she didn't trust me. didn't trust anyone after what she'd been through. So she refused my help, and I had to respect that choice and back off. 3 days later, the Iron Disciples murdered her and staged it to look like an overdose. "You're lying," Marcus whispered, desperately wanting not to believe, not to hope again. "I've been investigating her murder for 6 months," Reaper said. "Running down leads, bribing informants, following every thread. Never knowing she had a son. Never knowing you existed until you threw yourself in front of that rabid dog to save my daughter." He looked at Sarah with betrayal written across his features. "And I never knew my wife was actually FBI." Sarah's expression remained professionally hard, but something flickered beneath. "This doesn't change the facts, Reaper. You're still running a criminal organization. Marcus's mother died because of gang violence. Violence your world perpetuates." "No." A new voice interrupted from the shadows. Everyone turned. From behind the Iron Disciples, a figure emerged wearing a Hell's Angels vest. Older, maybe 50, with a face that looked disturbingly similar to Reaper's. Marcus's oxygen-deprived brain struggled to place the resemblance, then understood. "Brothers. The person responsible for Jennifer Hayes's death," the man said coldly, "is standing right here. Me. Reaper's older brother, Cain. I'm the one who told the Iron Disciples that Jennifer witnessed their execution. I'm the one who gave them her address, her routine, her son's school schedule." Reaper's face transformed into something terrifying. Pure, murderous rage. "Cain. Hello, little brother." Cain smiled without any warmth. "Surprised? You cut me out of the family photo 3 years ago, but you couldn't cut me out of your life. I've been watching everything. And when I heard about this homeless kid you adopted, I knew fate had given me the perfect weapon. Like and subscribe if you think Marcus makes it out alive." "You planted the storage key in my jacket," Marcus gasped, pieces falling into terrible place. "You wanted me to find the journal. To think Reaper killed my mother. To destroy his family from the inside. Finally, intelligence." Cain gestured mockingly. "Yes, I rented that storage unit 6 months ago. Collected Jennifer's belongings after the Disciples disposed of her. Kept them like insurance, waiting for the perfect moment. And tonight, we eliminate both Reaper and this FBI agent, and I take control of the Chicago charter." The Iron Disciples raised their weapons in coordinated movement. The Hell's Angels mirrored them instantly. Sarah trained her service weapon on Cain. Reaper stood, positioning his body as a shield between his traitorous brother and Marcus, making an impossible choice about which family mattered more. "You killed her," Marcus said, clarity cutting through blood loss and shock. "You murdered my mother for money and power. Business, kid. Nothing personal." Cain shrugged with psychopathic indifference. "Jennifer was a liability. Witnesses get eliminated. That's how this world works. And now you're about to learn the same." "She knew," Marcus interrupted, his blood-slicked hand finding the journal he'd been clutching. He opened it to the final page, the one he hadn't read in the storage unit. His mother's last entry, written hours before she died. His voice strengthened as he read aloud. "If you're reading this, Marcus, I'm already gone. But I need you to know the truth. Reaper tried to save us. His brother Cain is the one who threatened you, who sold me out to the Disciples. I was too afraid to trust Reaper when I should have. That's my fatal mistake, baby. Don't repeat it. Phoenix Protocol. Remember those words. Trust Reaper. He's the only one who cared enough to try. I love you forever. Mom." Silence fell like a hammer. "Dated and signed," Sarah said, her FBI training taking over. "That's admissible evidence." "Cain Blackwood, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, and racketeering." Sirens wailed in the distance. Not just one or two, but dozens. Federal vehicles flooded the station entrances. Sarah's backup had been positioned the entire time, recording everything, waiting for sufficient evidence. "Drop your weapons." FBI agents in tactical gear emerged from every shadow, at least 30 of them, rifles trained on both gangs. Nobody moves. The Iron Disciples scattered like roaches in light, some surrendering immediately, others trying to fight and being subdued within seconds. The Hell's Angels held their ground, waiting for Reaper's command. Cain tried to run. Marcus, bleeding and fading, stuck out his leg with the last of his strength. Kane went down hard, and 4 FBI agents swarmed him instantly, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The traitor who'd orchestrated Jennifer Hayes' murder was finally in custody. Paramedics rushed onto the platform. Reaper stayed beside Marcus, maintaining pressure on the gunshot wound. "Stay with me, kid. You're going to make it. You're strong like your mother." "Sarah," Marcus whispered. The cutout person in the photo, that was Kane, wasn't it? Reaper nodded grimly. 3 years ago, I discovered he was stealing from the club and working with our enemies. I expelled him from the Brotherhood and my life. Thought that was the end. He looked at Sarah with complicated emotions. But I never knew my wife was FBI agent Sarah Mitchell, or that this entire marriage was an undercover operation. Sarah approached, holstering her weapon, her professional mask cracking slightly. "It started as an assignment, Reaper. But Lily is real. Our daughter, everything about her, is real. And somewhere along the way." She looked at Marcus, then back at Reaper. "Maybe this 14-year-old kid showed both of us what actually matters. Not revenge, or cases, or territory. Family. Real family." Marcus's vision blurred as paramedics loaded him onto a stretcher. He'd lost dangerous amounts of blood. But before unconsciousness claimed him, he heard Reaper's voice, strong and certain. "Phoenix Protocol is activated, Marcus Hayes. You're family now. Real family. And we protect our own. Always." 6 months later, Marcus stood in Reaper and Sarah's living room, his shoulder fully healed except for a scar he'd carry forever. The wound from the dog attack had recovered well, though he'd never regained full strength in that arm. The past 6 months had been transformative. Sarah's FBI investigation had dismantled the Iron Disciples' Chicago operations entirely. Kane was serving consecutive life sentences for murder conspiracy, racketeering, and a dozen other charges. Justice, finally, for Jennifer Hayes. Reaper had cooperated fully with federal authorities, providing testimony that distinguished between the Hells Angels' legal motorcycle club activities and individual criminal actions. Some members had been arrested, others expelled. The organization was reforming, slowly, under new leadership that emphasized brotherhood over violence. And Marcus had stayed with the family, not as an informant or a symbol, but as a genuine son and brother. Sarah had left the FBI, unable to continue the deception, choosing her family over her career. She and Reaper were in therapy, rebuilding trust one painful conversation at a time. It wasn't perfect. Some days were harder than others, but they were trying. Lily had just turned 8. She called Marcus her big brother without hesitation, showed him off at school, drew pictures of their family that now hung on the refrigerator. "You ready?" Reaper asked, adjusting Marcus's tie. Today was the official adoption hearing. After months of legal battles, background checks, and court appearances, Marcus Hayes was about to become Marcus Hayes Blackwood. A real family, legal and permanent. "I'm ready," Marcus said, and meant it. At the courthouse, the judge reviewed the paperwork with a kind smile. "This is unusual, a minor voluntarily choosing adoption after age 12. Marcus, you understand this is permanent? That Reaper and Sarah Blackwood will be your legal parents with all rights and responsibilities." "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus's voice was steady. "They saved my life. Not just from the dog or the gunshot. They gave me a reason to stop surviving and start living. Subscribe and like. This is what second chances look like." The judge signed the decree. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. You have a son." The courtroom erupted in applause. 50 Hells Angels members had shown up in support, wearing suits instead of leather, respecting the solemnity of the moment. Sarah's FBI colleagues attended too, witnesses to an ending nobody had expected. Outside the courthouse, news cameras waited. Marcus's story had made national headlines. Homeless boy saves biker's daughter, exposes murder conspiracy, finds family. Hollywood producers had already called about adaptation rights. But Marcus wasn't interested in fame. He just wanted normal. Reaper put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. "Your mother would be proud. You chose truth over revenge. Family over anger. That takes real courage." "Phoenix Protocol," Marcus said quietly. "She gave me the code to save my life. But really, She gave me the code to find you. To find home. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. Lily grabbed Marcus's hand and didn't let go. They walked to Reaper's truck as a family. Imperfect, complicated, scarred by trauma, but bound by choice. Not the family Marcus was born into, but the family he'd earned through sacrifice and survived through courage. As they drove home through Chicago's streets, Marcus looked out the window at the city that had nearly killed him. The alleys where he'd hidden, the dumpsters where he'd scavenged, the abandoned buildings where he'd frozen. All of it was behind him now. His future wasn't perfect. He'd start therapy next week to process the trauma. School would be challenging after missing so much. The nightmares would probably never fully stop, but he'd face all of it with family beside him. That night, Marcus placed his mother's journal in a box with her photographs and the Phoenix Protocol note. He didn't need to carry it anymore. Her final gift, trust and hope, lived in him now. On his desk sat college brochures. On his wall hung Lily's drawings. In his closet were clothes that fit and a winter coat that would keep him warm. And in the living room, a new family photo had replaced the old one. Reaper, Sarah, Lily, and Marcus, all smiling. Nobody cut out. Nobody erased. Marcus Hayes Blackwood had finally come home.